Great. Okay, many thanks, Adrian. Thanks for inviting me, and many thanks to all of you who've joined this evening. Much appreciated. Hopefully you can all hear me okay and also see the slides. Adrian, is that, yeah?
Yeah, slide is there for me, yeah.
Okay, good. So as Adrian mentioned, going to be talking about global fitness in practice and some reflections on how to develop and strengthen it. I suppose it's a few months ago now, there was a post on LinkedIn which said knowledge is insufficient to change behavior. And I looked at that and I thought, well, of course. But then the more I thought about it, I thought actually it's not necessarily quite as straightforward as that. So I think, okay, what else do we need? And then I thought, is it actually just behavior we're trying to change? What about attitudes? What about sense making and so on? And some of these were the questions that we were actually grappling with when we decided to write the book Global Fitness for Global People. As Adrian said, I've spent much of my career in university and academic context, and we have to write for the research excellence framework, and it's often quite complicated. And so this was our attempt to think, okay, can we do something that's useful to practitioners, to people in the profession? And so trying to get that balance between knowledge, behavior, developing behavior was something that we were trying to grapple with. So today I'm going to touch on first, what did we mean by global fitness, why we chose that term, who's responsible for it, and then how does it develop, and that's where we'll go into some breakout rooms to talk about some things. Okay, so first of all, why the term global fitness? Now, I found certainly at university at Warwick, but also elsewhere, that if people ask me, what do you do? And you say, oh, I teach intercultural communication or intercultural competence, it was a kind of complete conversation ender. People didn't know what that meant at all. And for the majority of students, it didn't mean anything. And so on the one hand, we were trying to have a term that might be not be more of a conversation opener rather than a conversation stopper. I think also we felt that the global fitness conveys the need for sort of ongoing attention and effort. I'm sure many of you find that in the business world, and actually David Livermore was saying this recently on LinkedIn, people want quick fixes. Can you give me, 5 things I should do when I'm going to work in X country? And they sort of want this instantaneous, you could say, competence. But actually, we wanted to get across the idea that intercultural competence is an ongoing journey, requiring effort all the time. And like fitness has various different facets, so also there are different facets to being interculturally competent. We also hinted at the need to fit in that sense, fitness to fit in, but not that sense of one-sided adaptation, but more the person-environment concept within psychology, where you have both complementary fit as well as congruence fit. We can talk about that a bit later if you had any questions. So what was our definition then of global fitness? we'd say comprises the features that enable a person or organization to succeed in context of cultural diversity. So not unexpected skills, qualities, values of individuals needed for that. But we've also thought the steps that they can take to develop those characteristics and grow as individuals. And perhaps even more importantly, in the sense that it's often left out, the environment or the context that supports and fosters the development. I mean, I found it at Warwick, and I'm sure other places as well, that there is a kind of assumption, if we're developing global graduates, it's sort of, are these students, you know, really global graduates? And it's very much on, you know, as it were, pointing the finger at the students or at the employees, whereas actually there are, it's the environment as well. And that raises the question then, who is responsible for developing global fitness? And this is the framework that we came up with and for the book, and it's how the book is organized. So certainly there are those characteristics, those qualities, as we said, global fitness in practice, the skills and qualities. So part one of the book is looking at understanding the goals, what we're sort of aiming at. Then part two is looking at what are the tools, activities, what do you have to do to try and achieve that global fitness in practice. And then part three of the book is on that organizational context of molding the workplace and the social context. So perhaps a little bit more detail than global fitness in practice, and you notice we've got skills and qualities. So we have global personal qualities like self-awareness, knowledge and understanding, like establishing common ground, which actually is really important for communication. So we have also a chapter on global communication skills, enhancing mutual understanding, and global rapport management skills, developing strong relationships. So those are the key things for the goals. We then have in part two of the book, which is focusing, as I say, on the global fitness engagement, what you do to try to develop those skills. So we've got how to embrace the unfamiliar, reflect and adapt, how to build global relationships and enhance rapport. And you'll see here there are overlaps. We had rapport in part one, but then here it's very much how to build it, how to collaborate and succeed in global teams, how to exercise global leadership. And then how to handle ethical challenges and maintain integrity. This was one we weren't quite sure where to fit, but decided in the end that actually dealing with ethical challenges is an important part of the important toolkit. And then part three of the book, which is perhaps we feel is a little bit more unusual to come in a book on intercultural competence, is focusing very much on the global fitness environment, which here we're taking it to be the organization that the person works in, because it is a book focusing on the workplace. So ensuring well-being, so much on that. Now, you know, if people don't have that sense of well-being, they're unlikely to grow in their skills and so on. Promoting learning and innovation, again, how is the organization facilitating that? What courses, etc., do they put on? And then identifying development priorities, how to monitor and benchmark performance and satisfaction, and talk a bit about that in a moment. So there's some tools, assessment tools, diagnostic tools, and then very much the area for a lot of you working in as trainers, actually managing those development initiatives. So that is showing the broad outline. Here's just one example from the diagnostic chapter. So we have a tool that developed when I was at Warwick, the Global Fitness Profiler, which has that same threefold framework of the practice, global fitness in practice, the global fitness engagement, and the environment. And so one of the factors is intercultural training and support. So does an organization provide that? And the profiler, we ask the same questions in two ways. How important is this to you? And how far are you experiencing it in your workplace? So this is, and that gives us a scatter plot where everything on the right-hand side, people are saying this is really important to me. Those at the top are saying, I'm experiencing this. So you can see here that actually 86% of the departmental staff of this particular company that we ran it with said they felt that intercultural training and support was really important to them. They were an international company. But you'll also see only 14% said that they were receiving it. Nearly 3/4 of them, 72% here, said it was important to them, but they were not receiving it. So clearly this is the sort of kind of information that people can use to demonstrate the development priority. So in that, in part 3 of our book, we give examples of tools like this that can be used to help identify the development needs. Okay, so that really is just giving you an overview of the framework for the book, the kinds of topics that we chose. That brings us perhaps to the core of this as to how do we go about developing it. So for this, I'm going to show you a critical incident. And in a moment, we're going to put you into breakout rooms so that you can talk about this. This is what happened to some of my students a year or so ago. 2 Asian girls, one Chinese, one Japanese. So they wrote this, actually, were invited by a British lady to her home to learn how to do English baking. The girls had not met the lady before, so they brought her some fruit and drinks to express their appreciation. After the baking, they enjoyed eating some of the fruit they'd brought and some of the desserts they'd made together at the lady's home. So they had a time eating their things. When the 2 girls were leaving, the British lady asked them to take the desserts and fruit that had not been eaten. The girls were shocked that the lady asked them to take away something they had given her as a gift. So, some questions to think about. Why do you think the British lady invited them to take over the leftover desserts and fruit? Why were the girls shocked at this? And then what types of global fitness, what kinds of quality skills or whatever do the girls and the British lady need in order to understand each other better? And how could you help both the girls and the British lady become more globally fit for this kind of situation? So Adrian or Katie, I think, are going to put you into groups to talk about that. But I think, first of all, you're going to put these questions or the link, is that right, into the chat?
Yep, I think it's now in the chat.
So I'll stop sharing. Yep.
So I'm going to divide you into groups of 5 approximately for about 10 minutes, and do discuss the case and not talk to each other about where you're from and so on, as often happens. So here we go.
Perhaps I should also say, since one or two have asked, was this an authentic incident? Yes, this occurred with my students. Perhaps I should also say, and in the book, The Global Fitness for Global People, everything is authentic. I have a very strong view on that. I don't like to use made up stories. So this happened, and what we had done the very first year we ran the Intercultural Communication master's degree, at the end, I asked one of the students, what did you think of the course? And she said, oh, the course was great. Pity I haven't met any British people. And that was kind of like a knife into my heart then, because, you sort of think, what's going on? So we then organized, and I see there's Andrew Smith as one of the people here, he was part of that we did a thing which we called sort of meet the locals, and people in the area who were actually very interested in international students. So there were various sort of activities that people offered to do. So I don't actually know who the British lady was, because the students wrote this in one of their assignments, and when I read it I thought, oh gosh, this was not, but I think I can guess who it was. So I don't know if anybody of you wants to comment either orally or else put in the chat. Why do you think the British lady asked them to take the fruit and the leftover dessert back with them? Any thoughts? You can, on your screen, there's a thing which says reactions. If you click on that, you can put up a virtual hand to say you're happy to say something. Or anyone want to, or you can write it in the chat if you feel more comfortable. Nobody's brave enough.
Well, we do have a hands up from Claire.
Oh, right. Okay, Sally.
Oh, right, sorry, Claire was there. Yes, we had a good discussion. We felt that the lady was sending it back because she didn't want to waste the fruit that had been brought. Perhaps she felt that she wouldn't be able to eat all of it herself. Perhaps she was thinking that as students, they maybe didn't have as much money or income or budget or whatever, and again they would benefit from the from taking the fruits back themselves. So all around waste really, and not wanting to waste anything.
Yeah, okay. Jelaine, do you want to so you got your hand up?
I just wanted to add that in our group, it was a great group, by the way. Thank you for that placement. It was brought up that quite possibly through communication from all parties, it would have been good. The way we understood the description, it wasn't a question of the baking goods that they created together. That would have been fine to share, but it was the fruit that was brought as a gift was the issue. And maybe, as I think it was Sally mentioned, that they didn't want to waste something, but returning a gift is not such a good idea in some cultures, but maybe if they had explained it, it would have been clearer for everyone, and it all comes down to communication.
Yeah, we got a couple of comments in the chat,
Yeah.
showing a caring attitude, mother-children relationship,
More than cultural.
more than cultural. Although one could ask, is mother-children relationship also culturally based?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jelaine, you wanted to say some more, or did you not put your hand down? Sorry, yeah. Okay, what about the students? Why were they upset? I mean, perhaps I should say, I don't know, because I don't know from the British lady's point of view, because I don't know who it is. I can guess, so I don't know for sure, but Adrian had mentioned age. I mean, yes, she was retired. And there could be a whole lot of reasons. I think all that you've mentioned. If it's who I think it is, my sense is she thought students would have less money and therefore it would be good, yes, not to waste, but she's got family and people around, so it wouldn't have literally gone wasted, but I think it was care and concern for them. Maybe also, I don't know, our notion of potluck, what you take when you're doing things together, you take away afterwards. What about the students then? Any thoughts on that? Why were they so upset?
We've got a few comments in the chat.
Okay, gift being returned, yeah. Yeah, maybe the British lady didn't.
Particularly in those Asian cultures, that's quite a strong cultural thing, that you don't return a gift.
Gift, exactly.
Even in that context.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, okay, so we've got that situation, and as here you've got a local person who really wants to befriend and really help the international students settle in. Yeah, so we've also got would it have been better if they had brought a Japanese gift, a different idea of respect for older people? Perhaps they bought what they thought she would like, but they didn't. So yeah, different possibilities. How, if we move to question 3, how could we help in this situation? As I say, we've got a British lady wanting to really help international students feel more at home. And you've got students really wanting to learn more about British culture. Can we do anything about that? What sort of qualities actually would they both need? Patricia.
One of the things we spoke about in the group was this notion of putting the situation on the table that doesn't always work across cultures, but also talking about intention, recognizing that in fact everyone here, the way you just described it, Helen, has a positive intention, wanting to learn about the other. So it kind of brings me back to contracting. How do you contract your visit? Oh, this is how we do it in Japan. Oh, well, this is how we do it here. And using it as a clearly defined opportunity to talk about culture and to share what's going on. So frame it.
I mean, that's interesting, because I think looking back, although we'd set up this sort of meet the locals, we didn't actually kind of you know, we didn't do any preparation before. I mean, I didn't know actually until I read this that, you know, they invited individuals to go there, but maybe, as you say, we could have framed it more with those involved as to, you know, what does hospitality mean? How is it differently interpreted? Yeah.
So I think actually you mentioned right at the beginning, Helen, that, you know, knowledge is not by any means enough, but in this case, I think knowledge would have been very useful to understand, to know that there are different attitudes towards gift giving and towards hospitality that would enable them to then talk about it briefly.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll come back to that in a moment, but before we do, anything else that people want to share?
Yeah, in our group, if I may, we talked a little bit about the idea that somehow it seems to be the expectation that the people going into the other culture should inform themselves, and not necessarily that the people who are there in the other culture, whether that's British people receiving foreign students or Chinese people in a Chinese company, you know, receiving foreign engineers going in, that there's not so much the expectation that they should inform themselves about the people coming in, but somehow there's this assumption it's the people who are going to another culture who should inform themselves.
That's interesting, Chris, but just so everybody knows, another part of SIETAR UK's activities is the big project for refugees and asylum seekers and people hosting them, and the team working on that, which is headed up by Katerina Lichtenfield, who's on the SIETAR UK board as well. They've just written a guide for British people or people in Britain hosting Ukrainian refugees or people coming from Ukraine, the 6-month thing, which is all about understanding more about Ukrainian culture. So that, as you say, Chris, it is, particularly if it's on a large scale, then that's very important. In the same way, you've got hospitals with huge numbers of foreign nurses and doctors, and I wonder how much training or awareness raising goes on for the hosts, i.e. the staff, the British staff.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when I saw what the students had written, you know, I thought, oh my goodness, you know, because as I say, if I'm right in who I think the British person was, you know, she would have been mortified to feel that she had upset the students. And so my sense was as Patricia mentioned earlier, was thinking we hadn't framed it enough with the local people who wanted to get involved. So maybe if we move on, and I'll if I can go back to sharing my screen. So if we move on, I mean, what we try to do with this kind of activity is very much, we use a little tool which some of you may be familiar with, and I know Katerina has used it a lot also with the Ukrainian things, what we call the 3R review tool, where we're encouraging people to reflect and learn from incidents, and this would include all parties. Very often people react emotionally, and so step one is to actually note down the facts of what actually happened, and then step two, reflect on why it happened and people's reactions. And as Adrian sort of rightly pointed out there, this is where some knowledge actually does come in useful. You can ask others, and this is what we were also mentioning, but often sometimes with more complex things, it is useful to have some kind of framework. So, you know, for when things have gone wrong on a relational level, we would realizing that people's goals may be different, their sense of rights and obligations might be different around how you behave as a host or how you behave as a guest, face sensitivities, you know, like clearly the students saw it as a face threat, but it wasn't meant like that at all. And then reconsider your interpretation and reaction. So in the book, we have got loads and loads of examples. The one I've given you is not from the book, actually. And we explain this framework also on our website. You can download a sort of copy of the framework. So I started the session by talking about, you know, is knowledge enough? And as I say, I've been on a little bit of a thinking journey myself, and we know very much, we talk about the either the ABC or the CAB things: cognition, knowing and thinking; affect, the attitudes and feelings and emotions; the behavior, the doing and the responding. And it's actually, as this diagram sort of indicates, they're all interconnected. So our knowledge and thinking and our emotions affect behavior, but also our behavior can affect our thinking and our emotions. So they're all interconnected. So although we may be talking about the need for behavior, in fact, we can't ignore these other elements because they're so closely interconnected. And as Adrian pointed out, on this particular occasion, knowing some things would have been very useful. I think the other thing to say is that behavior isn't only doing, but it's also reacting and responding. Responding is linked with reactions. And if you think something happens and we react, and then we often respond in what we say or what we do. And those reactions are linked with feelings and thinking, i.e. with our emotions, the affect and the cognition. So, you know, as we were thinking about this whole idea of how are we training, behavior, yes, in the sense of doing, but we've put it in this sort of bigger picture, very much into the transformational learning, engaging with the unfamiliar, paying attention to it, being willing to ask about it, but then willing to analyze it. And that's where we see the 3R review tool coming in, and then applying the learning from it, because reaction management is actually really important. So intercultural competence, global fitness, in our view, is not just what you do or what you say, but it's actually how you react and how you evaluate and so on, what other people do or say. In the book, we've also got the SOS Adapt tool. I haven't got time to talk about that now, but that's very much more on the behavioural side. So again, in the book, we talk about that well, not just talk about, illustrate it and give examples. So some other key features of the book. Numerous diagrams. So for example, we talk about the 3 Ps of culture using the tree: products, practices, perspectives. We have interaction compass, which we apply to especially teamwork and leadership. This comes from a lot of psychological work on the interpersonal circumplex, if you're interested in that. lots and lots of, I don't like the word stories, but anyway, they are cases, critical incidents, whatever you want to call them, all of them authentic. As I said, we're not don't like to use made up ones. We've got various tools for personal learning and development, reflection activities, some of them that I've just mentioned. Every chapter ends with key takeaways, giving the core insights from a knowledge point of view, but also the applications for practice. We've tried as far as possible to use as little jargon so that it can be as easy to read for non-native users as possible. We hope that it's also useful for learning and development decision makers, especially part 3 of the book. Whoops, and then I just jumped on. So if you want to know more, there is an extract on our website, GlobalPeopleConsulting.com books, and obviously you're very welcome to get in touch to ask any questions. And if you've got any questions now, very happy to take them. And I will stop sharing here.
Thank you very much, Helen. So to everyone, we have recorded this, so we'll be putting that on our website. And Helen, would it be okay if we included the slides?
Yes, sure.
So, and that will have those contact details that she's just shown. So all the possibilities for following up. There's something in the chat here from Andrew. What is it?
Yes, Andrew says, I sometimes think one key to being culturally competent is to be unoffendable and not to overthink things. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, often I think we do. I mean, whether we're talking about intercultural situations or any situation, we do tend to think over why things happened. You know, I don't think that's a bad thing, but it can go too far. Yes, Lucy says it's called resilience. Any other questions or comments?
Well, thank you very much.
Sorry, Sally's got a hand up.
Sorry, just very one quick one, Helen. Thank you for that. Really, you know, again, very insightful. You mentioned right at the beginning this sort of hint at fitting into an organisation, and talked about psychological concept of the person environment fit.
Yes.
Is there something more that you explain about that in the book, or is there anything else that we might be able to read about?
Yeah, we do say a little bit more in the book. Basically, from a psychological point of view, sort of the fit, environment fit, it isn't, people sometimes think it's, oh, you know, the person from outside needs to change and fit in with the people sort of who are there already. That's not actually from a psychological point of view. And so they talk actually of 2 types of fitting in-ness, if we can call it that. One is complementary fit. So actually it's saying, you know, I mean, if you're building a team, you need a complementary, you need that diversity actually. So you've got that complementary fit, but they also talk of congruence fit, so that when we are different, we have to find points of congruence and so on. So it's actually not into the sort of the outsider needs to change to the insider, but rather that actually everybody needs to actively work on being able to fit together, and you need that diversity in order to, you know, actually achieve the maximum.
And I think that's illustrated, just to conclude, by the example that you gave. It was both the British lady needing to know more, but equally the students also needing to move more to kind of to move towards each other rather than one or other party being sort of right or wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. No.
Patricia.
I think this is a point. It'd be lovely to have quite a lot of time to discuss it, particularly looking at the corporate world when Western leaders are coming in with their big boots, and how are we preparing the teams in place to be open to the difference? Are they actually themselves even asking for this difference? It's, I think a lot of work needs to be done on both sides, as you've said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very difficult. Maybe I shouldn't say this now. I've been watching this afternoon all the new appointments to the cabinet in Britain after all the disaster of the last few weeks, and I suppose, you know, Rishi Sunak is trying to bring in people from different parts of the party and different viewpoints. And, you know, in one sense, you know, first you think, oh, that's great. And then I see the person who's been reappointed as Home Secretary is the person who says it's her dream to send as many immigrants off to Rwanda as possible. And you sort of think, you know, this is the difficulty. How far do we accept these different viewpoints?
It also depends upon, are these people going to be working in consultation with one another?
Exactly.
And the different points coming in when you're head secretary, it's much more top down. You make a decision, you develop a policy. Where is the collaboration and policy development?
Yeah.
No, well, we will see what happens in that particular case. Some people are giving them 6 months before it all implodes. So actually that last point about diversity is something that we'll be looking at on the 10th of July. The diversity, equity and inclusion from the perspective of different countries. And also another point which came up earlier this evening, what skills and qualities are needed by global graduates. So you mentioned that, Helen. That's the topic on the 17th of November, the result of an Erasmus research project amongst 6 or 7 universities, and London South Bank University team are going to present the findings of that particular project. So we'll send out the information about those tomorrow and hope to see you at one of those events or both. And thank you again, Helen, and to everyone. It was what everyone's saying, very nice discussion, interesting to look at some models, and just good to share, good to be in a breakout room and chat, even though we can go and meet people now, but still difficult to meet people from around Europe.
That's right.
And it's not just Brexit that stops that. But anyway.
Yeah, so many thanks to all of you for joining in and all your contributions. That's great. Do feel free to, you know, get in touch and you know, and follow up. As you say, we haven't had chance to really discuss quite a lot of the things. I don't know, Mila, have you got? No, it hasn't got a hand up. But it's yeah, it's been great to be with you all. Thanks very much for joining.
Okay.
Thank you, Helen. Adrian.
Thank you very much.
Good night to everybody.
Bye,
Nice evening.
Greeting from the continent.
Okay, Helen. Well, thanks a lot again. It was lovely to see you.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me, Adrian. That was great.